Welcome to Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science. I'm your host, GV Pawan Kumar. It is my delight and pleasure to introduce you to the guest on this particular episode, Jeevanjyoti Chakraborty. Jeevan has been an outstanding, science educator, associate professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Kharagpur. He has one of the best YouTube academic channels I have actually seen from India, and it is not only about knowledge but also about how to learn, how to think, and there are so many interesting things what Jeevan does, and I'm very delighted to introduce Jeevan on Pratidwani. Hi, Jeevan.
Thank you, Pavan. Thank you. Thank you for such beautiful and kind words. Very generous of you. Thanks a lot
My
for
pleasure.
having me on your podcast.
My pleasure. My so Jeevan, I see that you actually have been in Kharagpur for a while now. Tell us a little bit about how you really got interested in science and engineering. What was your origins, and how did you develop interest in things what you do?
Well, so now that I am 40, I can stop caring too much about what people will think about my honest opinions and be very frank about it. So, like many students in India who happen to be a little bit academically serious when they're kids, they are kind of indoctrinated to the idea that they should go into science. So
Yes.
in my
Yeah.
case, it was no different. I grew up with the notion that since I am somewhat good and somewhat academically serious, I must go into science. Nothing else matters. So that was whether it was a wrong notion, whatever it was, but it is what it was. So now, when I was in class 9 and 10, we had physics, uh, the, the low level physics, uh, but one particular chapter was particularly riveting to me, and that was optics. Uh,
Nice.
and yeah, and especially the various cases that you have in reflection, refraction, and the little experiments that we got to do in our lab. So that kind of riveted me. So probably the motivation of telling myself that I wanted to be a scientist was based on wrong things, but when I actually got interested in the thing, probably it was the right thing. And since you asked a little bit about science education, which is very top notch, which is a very top notch thing in my list of priorities,
Hmm.
uh, when I was a student, probably it was during my 11th and 12th when things uh, really got hot in terms of the difficulty. Sometimes for difficult concepts, I found myself kind of trying to understand the things by pretending that I would be explaining this to a group of friends. So nobody was around, but I just pretended to myself, how would I explain this thing to a group of friends who had perhaps not studied this chapter? So I mean, on more than one occasion, I caught myself doing this thing, probably involuntarily. And I did not realize it back then, but on hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight that I have now, I think those were the first, like the germinating instincts uh, of having science education top notch in my priority. Uh, so
That's
these are
wonderful.
the things. These were some instinctual things you could say.
This is something which is very fascinating, Jeevan, because that ability to explain things is so important while doing science, and the fact that you are trying to make this exposition kind of external really leads to a kind of thought process which is generally not possible if you just think by yourself, right? Because
Yes.
you need an audience, even a perceived audience, even if it is a kind of a
Yes.
fictitious audience, and that's so important. And that is probably another reason why you're also such a good teacher, because that is part of being a teacher, right? That is a very critical
Yes.
thing. So
And
in that
then
way,
when we
yeah.
speak things to others, there are certain concepts, certain turns of phrases, um, which we necessarily have to use, and um, through which we realize that uh, probably we did not understand the concept when we were just thinking about it ourselves. Like we cannot hide our ignorance.
Absolutely correct. I so much agree with that particular viewpoint. We cannot hide your ignorance, and neither can you also hide good work. That is also something which is very important,
Absolutely.
because one of the very impressive aspect is that while growing up, if you also are exposed to concepts in a way you should be kind of getting exposed to, where only the examination is not part of your agenda, but beyond that particular thing, as you beautifully explain in many of your own videos. Could you also elaborate a little bit about how was your schooling and how was your college days? What really brought you to this thought process? Because it doesn't happen just in a day. I think you would have really thought through this, and it would have become part of your own education, because so much of important information and thought cannot just arise only by being a teacher on the other side. You would have surely thought through a lot as a student. I'm just curious to know a little bit more about your own thought process of how did you come to the point where you're really thinking so deeply on exposition and also teaching pedagogy and other things.
Right. I think two big transitions happened during my education. The first was in class ninth, and the second one was probably during my 11th, uh, if I remember correctly. So, when as a kid, like a little kid,
Mhm.
uh, so uh, my mom tells me I was quite serious. I don't remember those days. She
Yeah.
tells me I was quite serious with my homework. And it just so happened that in kindergarten, I happened to get the first position in class. I didn't care about it back then. I didn't even realize it. I was so stupid actually. So once I remember that I got 25 out of 25 in a test, and I was so very sad that I thought that it was supposed to be always 10 out of 10 or 100 out of 100. What was this 25 business? It means that I have done something wrong, that I have not got
Okay.
100. So I told my mom very sadly that, see, I've got only 25 out of 25. So she explained, he had to take a lot of pains to explain to me. That was one of my earliest memories. So I was good, but I was stupid. Uh, but then it kind of became a thing for me that I had to be the first boy of my class.
Mhm.
Nobody actually told me that you have to. My parents did not pressurize me. They kind of certainly motivated me, but they did not pressurize me so much. But it somehow got into my head that I had to be the first boy in my class. Like nothing else would be enough. It was a very bad thing on hindsight. Um, and it went on like that. Then I changed my school to Don Bosco Guwahati, where the competition was bigger. Uh, I managed to be a first boy there too, so that kind of became a thing. Now, in class ninth, I was getting this good ranks. I mean, the first rank in class. Uh, but in class nine, our teacher, our maths teacher, one of the maths teachers, he encouraged us to participate in the maths Olympiad.
Mhm.
And it was then that I realized that I knew nothing. So what I had based the way that I had learned and had time and again become the first boy was just by mugging up things. So based on the repetitive nature of the examinations, all that I was basically doing was uh, mugging up the things and regurgitating them in the exams, even in the maths exam. Uh, so that was like a real shock to me that my whole life has been a lie. But thanks to that particular teacher, and I always thank him, Mr. Avanti Kumar Bordolai from Don Bosco Guwahati. He really told me that what you are thinking, what you have realized, you are shocked, but this is the truth.
Mhm.
Real
Mhm.
maths doesn't work the way that you were doing it till class 8. So I really worked a lot in my class ninth and 10th on my maths, on relearning how to learn. uh, so that was one of my first, that was one of the biggest transitions of my life. And if that transition had not happened, I don't think I would have managed to come to IIT. I mean, do many of the things which later on managed to do. Uh, and then I took science and came to 11th. I went to Cotton College, Guwahati. Uh, there it was a very classical kind of education, like classes were held by very senior professors. So making it a point to say this because nowadays many students go to these dummy schools, right, where they don't have this
Yes.
classical education. I was really fortunate that I got to go to that particular college and have a very classical education at the 11th and 12th. Uh, but uh, I also realized that whatever the level was there in the up to 10th, uh, it was nothing. It
Mm,
was nothing absolutely. Like 11th and 12th is a completely different ball game. I had to level up. It didn't matter that I had gotten a state position in my boards. None of that mattered. And I really did very poorly in my chemistry in my 11th.
mm,
Very, very poorly. That was a wake up call. And especially when studying physics, I really could understand that I was I was trying to hide my confusion regarding various things, especially when studying mechanics. I was kind of sweeping certain misunderstandings, beneath the carpet, so to speak. And then later on, inevitably, I would have to face that confusion while doing certain problems. So there
mhm,
was no way to hide your confusion. There was no way to hide your ignorance. It has to be, you have to be absolutely true to yourself. This academic honesty, being true to oneself, like really saying that yes, I have not understood it, I need to stay with this concept even if it requires the whole day. That was a big transition in my life. So uh, that was that. So uh, all this was in Assam, by the way, in Guwahati. uh,
nice. You're
and
you're
then
born in Guwahati. You're
no,
born in Guwahati.
I was born in at a place called Dhubri, which is at the border of West Bengal and Assam.
Yes, Assam. Okay.
But my parents shifted to Guwahati, and
Mm,
that's where I grew up. I did my entire schooling there. I prepared for JE from Guwahati, and then in my first attempt, I failed. Uh,
mm,
so I got a position. I got fifth rank in the state boards in my 12th, but I failed
nice.
IIT JE. So so that was also facing the stark reality of life. Uh, I took a drop, and uh, that year I really worked on fixing the loopholes in my preparation. I did not join any coaching. I one good thing was that I realized what mistakes I had made. So in chemistry, I had a lot of loopholes to fill. In physics and maths, there were certain different levels of preparation that I had not yet unlocked, which I had to unlock. So those were the things, very specific things, which I knew about my own preparation, which I worked on, and I think that kind of worked in my favor. So I
Fabulous.
I managed to get it. Uh, yeah, and being from a Bengali family, like IIT Kharagpur is always a fascination. So
Yeah, yeah.
I was getting IIT Guwahati Computer Science, but I really wanted to come to IIT Kharagpur, so mechanical.
Nice, nice. So you mentioned a couple of points which are very important, and you have also mentioned this in some of your videos, uh, because you know how to handle failure. That is something which is extremely important. I'm also very impressed by the fact that you did not even go to coaching class. You prepared by yourself,
So
and then
I want to give a clarification. I had
yeah.
joined coaching.
Mhm.
So in my 11th, we went to on one local coaching. We didn't have any
Mhm.
branded
Mhm.
coaching back then at Guwahati. In my 12th, I joined a coaching institute.
Mhm.
But during my drop year, I didn't join it. I only sat for the mock test. So
Yeah, yeah,
just for the
yeah, yeah.
record.
No, even then, you know, because see that regimented aspect
Yes,
is now so common nowadays. There are so many kids who are put under so much of pressure because of that particular thing, which also has led to very unwanted consequences.
absolutely.
And in that way, you know, one is that you actually are talking from your own experience, which is actually very important, because you know you are a person who has cracked the exam. You have been all through the whole process. In that way, I think it's a great experience for you to actually share with so many young kids. I'm also curious to know to how was the support system at your home, because you know at that particular level of 11th and 12th standard, even if the student is actually very interested and motivated, there is sometimes the lack of maturity to really take that kind of decision. For example, even taking a decision of dropping it out, and then preparing with enough confidence that they can really go through, would require quite a lot of kind of support, both from the family system
Yes,
and
yes.
also internally. You should be strong enough. Where did that strength come from? That is something which I'm
Right.
always fascinated with a lot of
Uh,
people. Yeah.
so that brings back a lot of memories and feelings, very intense feelings. So when I actually did so very poorly in my first attempt that I did not even clear the screening. So we had a two-step thing back then. So first was the screening, which was
Mm,
objective type, and then the mains, which was so the equivalent of advanced, but it was subjective. So I did not even qualify for the subjective in my first attempt. So that was kind of crushing.
mm.
Uh, and when the results came out and I knew that this was not going to happen, I was so sad that, you know, we open the newspaper and almost every other day there'll be some news involving the word IIT.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I could
Even
not
now.
even open. Yeah, I could not open the newspaper. I did not want to read the newspaper because every mention of the word IIT would feel like a crushing feeling in my heart. So uh, my personal feeling was that if I have to have this feeling all throughout my life, if I have to carry this baggage all throughout my life, uh, it'll be tremendously painful. I have to give myself another opportunity to perhaps try once again. Otherwise, so this was actually, I'm not trying to dramatize it. So I remember
Yeah,
this
yeah.
very clearly that I told my dad that if I don't try again, even on my deathbed, I will have this regret that I did not try once again. So perhaps it was not a right way of thinking, but that was what I
Mm,
had felt, and I
mm.
told my dad that, and things became a little bit more complicated because you remember we had the AI Triple E, the All India
Yeah,
Engineering Entrance
yeah,
Examination for the
yeah.
NITs.
NITs,
I got
NITs.
a decent rank from my state quota, and I was getting NIT Surathkal, which is a
Oh,
fabulous
okay.
institute.
Oh,
Yes, which
yeah,
is a
yeah.
fabulous institute. So that was there that I could actually, if I wanted, I could just join NIT Surathkal.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so my mom really wanted me to go. She
Mm.
was not at all in favor of me dropping. It is like
Okay.
it was kind of like a black mark on a good student's CV that he's dropping.
Yeah,
So my
yeah.
mom was not in favor of it, but my dad said that okay, if you really want to try once again, go for it.
Mm.
So
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Uh, which also means that they were kind of very supportive, and you did have a supportive kind of background.
absolutely, absolutely.
That's
Once we
very,
had
very
decided,
great.
they were all
All
behind
set.
me.
Yeah. See, there is
And
a very
actually,
big.
and actually, I want to, I mean, send out a thanks to one of my neighborhood uncles.
Mm.
So our house was not that big, and there was a problem. So they had a very big house, and they actually gave me a separate room to study, where it was a more conducive environment to study. So
Yeah.
it takes a
See,
village to grow a kid.
exactly, exactly. You just mentioned the most important point, because many a times circumstance and also the kind of backing you get from people whom sometimes you don't even know
Yes.
would actually play a very critical role. It also makes one's life a little bit more humbling, right? Because you know that everything is not something which is just only because of the plan what you do. There are
No,
also
no, no,
supportive
no, no.
system what happens in the
All the
things.
boundary conditions, initial conditions, they make up what you are.
Absolutely. So very well put. So this also takes us to the part of your schooling, especially. I just wanted to know what kind of schooling you had, Jeevan. Like, did you have some kind of training also in any other extracurricular activities? Because one of the things I am very interested in is your exposition, the way you kind of interact with people. You're also very kind of clear while you're communicating. I've also seen some of the videos what you've created for the math methods and other
Yes.
things related to the to your the courses. which means that you would actually have to have a very good foundation.
Yes.
So which further connects to the education you get at schools, because that is the foundation which is very very important. So what was your experience of both your schooling and your kind of pre-university kind of education what you had?
I'm really grateful that you asked this question,
Mm-hmm.
because um, the debt that I owe to my school, to my high school. So I changed my school from standard 6 to standard 7th. I went to Don Bosco Guwahati. If I had not gone to Don Bosco Guwahati, nothing like this would have happened. My entire trajectory would have been completely different. So at Don Bosco Guwahati, we had fabulous teachers, like academic teachers, but we also had people who really encouraged us to, participate in extracurricular activities, and there were a bunch of things which were facilitated. So my main interests were quizzes and some kind of like public speaking kind of things, like
Mm-hmm.
things involving public speaking. And there was one particular gentleman, Mr. Karthik Fukan, who kind of took it upon himself to push me to like various public speaking opportunities, uh, and he actually taught me things. So that was that. I owe a world to him,
Wonderful.
world of, gratitude to him. So uh, my school played a like an immense role, like an
Mm-hmm.
immense role. This
It's
is
such an
yeah.
important point. Again, because nowadays, as you clearly mentioned, a lot of the schooling is somehow kind of surpassed. I'm not telling the years are surpassed, but the process is surpassed, because part of really getting educated is also to be in a community of peers, and interacting with them, communicating with them, talking to them, debating, all, and also presenting to your peers. I mean, of course, I don't know much about the coaching classes and other kind of environments, but I don't think it would be able to emulate what a school can, because school is not just only about classroom lectures or even laboratory sessions, right? Because you go beyond that. You really have a kind of a camaraderie,
Yes,
which is equally important.
yes, yes.
uh, uh, so in that way, were you also kind of encouraged by anything outside school, where you were thinking of really, uh, doing such kind of things, or mainly you were confined to your school and college education?
It was mostly confined to my school, because see, we had an auditorium. So it was a very big school, the biggest school in Guwahati actually. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
privileged that I got to study there,
Mm-hmm.
and thankfully the fees there was very low back in our time,
Mm-hmm.
so it was absolutely affordable. Um, Now we had an auditorium, and we were given the green signal by default to organize any inter-school competitions there. So whatever we wanted to do, we had it within the school compound. We used to
Nice.
invite schools from all over the city, sometimes all over the state, over
Mm-hmm.
to participate in various things where we were the organizers, being, I mean, mostly kids, like class 8, class 9, class 10 students. We were kids, but we were organizing things and taking it upon ourselves. So yeah, the fathers and the teachers there were really supportive. That played an
Nice.
immense role, and I really learned a lot from some of my friends. In fact, the way I speak, I learned it by kind of copying a couple of them. They were so very
Mm-hmm.
good, even in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I shamelessly I used to copy them. They were
In
so
fact,
good.
no, this is a very important point, what you're mentioning, Jeevan. See, complete originality is a myth. All of us know that, right?
Yes,
Because even great writers, great scientists, etc., uh, actually start with a reference point, because you would actually have to emulate something very good, which is also part of your own inspiration, and you build upon that, right? Because that is very very critical, because there is a notion, especially among research kind of ecosystem, that you have to be totally original. In fact, that is actually a complete myth, right? Because there will be always influence. Even, Newton actually had to build and tell,
Yes.
I'm standing
Yes.
on the shoulder of giants. Although that particular notion is challenged in some history of science kind of
Yes.
viewpoint. But what you're mentioning is very important. That's very, very critical. Yeah.
We are
So
we are made of we are made of bits and pieces of the people we come into touch with.
absolutely right. So very, very, very well put. So that kind of influence of also, trying to look up to somebody whom you really respect, and then trying to also emulate. And what happens is emulation never happens exactly the same. It brings in your own character
Yes.
and
Yes.
really adds your own flavor and your own kind of voice, so to speak. That's actually a great way to also learn teaching, right? That is something probably you would have also thought a little bit more about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I first started teaching, I just shamelessly copied Professor Suman Chakraborty
Mm, mm. Yeah.
because he had the most impact on me as a student. I was his PhD student, and
Mm.
he is an excellent communicator. Like
Yes.
people,
Yes.
everyone knows him by his like innumerable awards that he has
Oh,
gotten and
yeah, yeah.
everything, but we know him as an excellent
Outstanding.
communicator. Yeah, like we all went to do undergraduate projects with him.
Mm,
So people who were academically serious, we all went to do our undergraduate projects with him. So why did we get attracted to work with him? We understood very little of the research that he was doing. The main thing
mm.
that we got attracted to was that he's such a great teacher. He must be teaching really well. He must know his stuff really well. That's why we must do his project with him. That was our innocent line of thinking.
Nice, nice, nice. That's an important thing. In fact, people who don't know, and people should know, Professor Suman Chakraborty is an outstanding fluid mechanist, and who has done some great work and also done some fantastic research related to nowadays even applications of
Yes,
microfluidics and
yes,
other things.
yes, yes,
Jeevan did his PhD with him, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we'll come to that part of the
Yeah,
PhD
yeah.
because we're
Down
going
the
in
down the
down
chronology.
down the chronology. So then you did put a lot of effort. Then you cracked the JEE, and then you are entering IIT Kharagpur. Tell me about
Yes.
that experience, Jivan. Tell me about.
Oh man, it was really painful. So.
Yeah.
Uh, I was a single child. I mean, I am a single child. So suddenly being thrown into a crowd of a 650 batch, and
Hmm.
by the way, it was 650 back then. Now it is 2000 strong here at IIT
Strong.
Kharagpur. They're
Wow.
going to come
Okay.
tomorrow here.
Oh yeah, it's gonna start. Okay.
Right. So it was only 650 back then, but 650 is a big crowd. So I found myself in that crowd and uh, didn't know which way was up, and I
Hmm.
had to share a room. And well, I kind of invited the trouble, right? I could have
Hmm.
gone to IIT Guwahati, which would have been far easier, being beside my home. But I honestly thought about it. I thought that if I went to IIT Guwahati, it would be just beside my home, and I would probably never grow up
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
would always be under the implicit umbrella of my parents.
Hmm.
But if I came to IIT Kharagpur, I would have to like really strike it out on my own, which I had to through some painful
Nice.
throes. I had to do it. So first year was not pleasant. Uh, we had lots of credits to cover back then, and I was not a very good cyclist. Also, I had a
Hmm.
couple of accidents, so all sorts of challenges from all sides. And one very bad mistake that I made in my first year was that I only tried to concentrate on my studies.
Hmm.
I mean, the kind of thinking I had was that, see, I have failed once in entering these institutes, and somehow I've managed to come here. If I'm not serious in my studies, I would be doing myself a grave injustice, and I would
Injustice.
bring shame to my family. So I have to study the whole day, which is a very very bad mistake. It doesn't work. Like my brain got jammed, and the kind of um, returns, like the academic returns that I got out of just being with my books all day was not good, and I
Mm.
did not make some very good friends. I had a few friends, but I really didn't go out with them, have fun with them. I just crammed up with the books, and that was really stupid of me. So if the students are listening, don't do this mistake in your first year. Like, behave like a human being first, and then, I mean, you'll have sufficient time to study, and you're actually harming yourself by being with the books all day. Like, having a group of core friends is especially important when you are away from your family. This I realized very, very late. uh, Thankfully, in my second year, I corrected this mistake, and thank God I got a group of very, very, I mean, truly excellent friends, truly excellent friends, who were all completely different from each other, completely different from each other. And that really helped me to grow up. I really started growing up from my second year, I would say. First year, I kind of wasted it.
That is such an important point what you're mentioning. Be a human being first. you know that's such a critical and most important aspect, because the achievements are important, I agree, but that is not worth it at the cost of punishing oneself, or being not a good person around. In fact, that is a very critical thing. And this also means that you know uh, I'm always intrigued, because there is some level of maturity and self correction as you go along your life. You I can really yeah, it's very clear from the conversation that
Yes, yes.
that actually is the most important aspect for anybody, not just only the student, right? Because if you can somehow reflect upon your own thoughts and self correct yourself while going forward, this is a very critical thing, especially in the formative years, because you don't know what you're going to become, right? Because
Right.
none of us would have really anticipated ourselves to become either a professor or academic, or even somebody going to industry or something like that. uh, that Was there a deliberate self reflection you made, Jeevan? Because that's something which all of us should do, even at any age, more so for students, because that's not a kind of automatic, but it is necessary process. Were you thinking on those lines, or something, or you had a mentor or somebody whom you can go and talk
No,
to, or
I
something like?
I think if there is one thing that is, I mean, that's genuinely good I have done with my life, is to make these kinds of conscious choices of correcting my mistakes.
Mm,
At that point, especially, uh, I mean, at points where I realized that I was going wrong, I had no shame in following others who were doing it correctly.
mm,
So in my first year, after I realized that this is not how we are supposed to do it. I kind of again shamelessly copied from some of my friends who were doing it better than me. And then, as you said, there is one's own personal touch which comes into play. So I molded it into something which works for me. So second year was a big transition again, I would say.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
but at that point, I did not have any mentor. But ironically, um, I have to mention this. So times were different, right?
mm.
And in our uh, hall of residence, which was the hostel, uh, in the second year, there was this culture of orientation period, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, so the seniors, quote unquote, interacted with the juniors,
Yes, yes.
and there were a few things. So uh, when and some of this was actually genuine interaction, and uh, one of the seniors, he had lots of positions of responsibility uh, all over the campus, and he actually told me something very important, that, see, Jeevan, you are always thinking of academics, getting good marks and all these things. I am not academically serious. So he's telling me, uh, I don't have time to study because I have to do so many things for the campus. I mean, he was a general secretary of the Gymkhana
Mm.
and whatnot. So days would go by when he would not sleep, working for Springfest and these kinds of things. So lots of busy schedule. So he told me I don't have time to study, but I go to class regularly, and when I'm sitting on class, I forget everything else. I just try to
Nice.
absorb as much as possible from the class itself. So it is possible. It is possible to do these kinds of things if you concentrate in the right direction. So, um, very ironically, I got this kind of very precious advice from a senior who was not at all academically serious.
Mm.
So it was not mentorship, it was just a one off thing. And
Mm.
probably there were bits and pieces of hundreds of, or at least dozens of other subliminal influences that I picked up from my seniors here and there. Things which should not be done also. That also I learned from my some of my seniors. So
Mm.
staying together in a hostel, we learned these things. Uh, yeah. So although it was not an explicit mentorship, but I think the interactions with the seniors taught me some very, very valuable things.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice. So then you had a reasonably smooth BTech and MTech. How was that part of your
So I
other
was
other
in the dual
years?
degree program,
Mm.
which was 5 years.
Mm.
Second year I did quite well academically. Third year I bought a computer, got distracted, and kind of screwed up my academics in my sixth semester. I got B in all the subjects. So I that was my lowest performance, like 8 out of 10. That was very bad. And then I kind of I went for an internship at Georgia Tech. That was one good thing. That
Oh,
was a
very
good
nice. Very
experience.
nice.
Yeah. Uh, and then from my seventh semester, I kind of found a balance. I
Mm.
I kind of learned to have a little bit of fun and also managed my academics quite well. Uh, it went up from that.
Nice. Nice. So you were always interested in numerical simulations and other kind of things, or
Um,
were you also thinking about some other kind of areas?
Uh, so I actually got interested uh, in the academic line in my fourth semester. So I was
Mm.
sitting in my class of dynamics of machines. Professor Anirban Dasgupta, who is now my colleague here, was
Mm.
teaching that course. I was sitting in this class, and somehow it hit me like some kind of an epiphany that okay, this is a job, this also
Mm.
is a job, this person is it is his job, right? Like being a professor,
Absolutely.
he's getting to support his family very well. He has this extremely nice opportunity of coming to class, teaching these things, interacting at a very high level, this physics applications things. uh, what does it take to get this job?
This job. Okay.
So I
Nice.
found out that do you have a power cut there?
Yeah, you were mentioning about the interesting aspect of getting motivated, listening to lectures,
Yes.
and also looking at the academic aspects of people. It's a very fascinating thing. Could you tell a little bit more on that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I found out that the first thing that you have to do to get into this academic line is to get a PhD.
Mm.
So it
Mm.
was not I was not motivated by higher studies per se. I was motivated by um, the lure of becoming a professor.
Nice, nice.
So if one can put it like that, the lure of becoming a professor. How many people would have said this word? The lure
No,
of
no,
becoming a professor.
Professor, you're right. That too, in a day and age where academics is not highly sorted off. That's true.
So I found out that you have to do a PhD. And
Mm.
back in my fourth semester, I really didn't know what to do and what not. And but later on, when we had our undergraduate project, I did it with the first project I did was with another professor, and then I shifted to Professor Suman Chakraborty, and there I
Okay.
got a real taste of research for the first time. Uh,
Mm. Mm.
oh, by the way, the first problem that I did that went nowhere. It was
Mm.
a
Mm.
Okay, so I we,
Yeah.
we were trying to find out something, and the results were where gloriously it came out as 10 to the power minus 10, basically zero.
Okay.
Lot of Laplace
Okay.
transforms and this and that, lots of simulations, and after all, no effect basically. So
Nice.
we changed the problem midway through, and then we did something which was very interesting, and which went on to become the basis of my first problem of my PhD later on.
Nice. Nice. So,
Yeah.
during this time, Jeevan, were you also planning to do your PhD elsewhere, or were you also still thinking about staying back in India? What was your thought process then?
So after I came back from my internship at Georgia Tech, I had kind of some realizations that what kind of environment I wanted to work in.
Mm, mm,
If I had not gone to Georgia Tech, I would have definitely gone to the United States to do my PhD. If I had
mm,
not gone to Georgia Tech,
mm,
but if since I went to Georgia Tech and saw some of the things, some of the things which I really liked, some of the things which I did not like, and at that point it kind of tipped in one side. And
mm.
the very fact that we had someone like Professor Suman Chakraborty here, um, I thought that it should not be the case that ghar ki murgi dal barabar. Just because we have somebody in our backyard doesn't mean that he's
Yeah.
not world class. He is world
Yes.
class. It is
Yeah.
absolutely possible to do good work with him. And one good motivation we had was a couple of my seniors were already working with him after having done
Mm,
their undergraduate studies at IIT Kharagpur itself. So it was not a road absolutely not taken. It was
mm.
a less trodden path, but it was a trodden path. So I followed in their footsteps and I joined the Process Women with this group. Uh, I was definitely thinking of going to the United States until as late as 2008 autumn, but then
Nice.
I took a decision. No, let's fix this. I'm not going anywhere.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is again a very important lesson for a lot of people uh, who are at the cusp of starting their PhD, because majority of the times, especially students who graduate out of IITs, ICERs, and other places, majority of them think one should go abroad to do a PhD. Even among students who join nowadays integrated PhD courses, actually tend to take that particular decision. But given the kind of knowledge base that India has, it is still possible to do very good PhD. Of course, there are issues and there are problems in
Yes.
Indian system. I'm not at all brushing it away, but there is also a good set of people who are doing very good work. IITs, of course, IISc, TFR, uh, ICERs, and also in NITs and other places too. There are
Yes.
very good places,
Yes.
and of course there are also traditionally very good universities where there's also good work going on.
Right.
This is a very important thing, Jeevan, because you are graduating with a BTech from IIT. That is already a great kind of credit to the CV, which will be generally looked at as a very favorable thing if you apply anywhere across the world. And here you're making a deliberate decision to stay back, and you did kind of explain that you made it with a very specific kind of thought process. But the other thing is, again, I'm very very impressed by the maturity for a person who is just finishing their BTech MTech dual degree.
Right.
The lure of going to US will always still be there, right? Because it's a great opportunity and other things. But that conviction, that is something I'm very very impressed. But was it again your own choice, or you discussed with people, or how did you come to that decision?
First of all, thank you. I think a big factor was that uh, I could see just in front of me that a couple of seniors had done very good PhDs working with Professor
Mm,
Suman Chakraborty. So it was kind of proof that it could be done. Uh, it was it was not a decision that I had taken in vacuum.
mm,
So
mm,
I must always acknowledge their contribution in this decision. Uh, None of them forced me, and certainly not Professor Suman Chakraborty.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
Now, as I said earlier, if I had not gone to Georgia Tech, had I not seen the actual scene there, I probably would have been really, really lured by,
Mm,
I mean, going by this desire of going to the US, doing their PhD there.
mm,
But I'd been there for a couple of months, which is not a long duration, but at least at that point, I thought um, I'll be able to do better if I stay back here.
mm, nice, nice,
I
wonderful,
don't know whether
wonderful.
it was part conviction, part foolishness, part arrogance in my own conviction. What was it? But I would not
Hey,
change it.
you would not change it, and you're doing well. Suman, Professor Suman actually is an outstanding researcher, and
Yes.
you combining your efforts with kind of the mentorship what he has to offer. And the
Yes.
most important thing is, in the hindsight you can see it has worked out. This is an important example I want to just emphasize, because
Right.
generally the notion is that somehow you have to always have this tag as an important factor. I'm not denying that tags are important are not
Yeah, yeah.
important. Yeah,
It is what it
but
is. It is what it
yeah, it
is.
is, it is what it is, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But there are also people who have very strong views, and if you stick to that, and if you feel that what you're doing is right, and you really work through that, because it also means that you're ready to work, right? It's not that you're assuming that everything is going to be put on your platter and nothing
No, no, no.
is thing. So that is a quite an important aspect, and some it's a great lesson for everybody in that sense. I think it's an important lesson. That's a very critical thing. Yeah. So, what kind of work did you do during your PhD, Jeevan? Can you just give us a brief overview of that? Just
Yeah.
kind
So,
of gist of your
like,
PhD. Yeah.
yeah, the formal terminology is electrokinetics.
Mm,
So basically, it's fluid flow through very small channels,
mm,
um, and looking at the effects, the surface effects in the form of some charge distributions. Some interesting things happen. So we're looking at
mm,
it. Uh, One new aspect which I explored was that I took into account the deformability of the channel walls. So
mm,
previously, most of the people who were working in this area, they had taken the fluid flow through rigid walls where there was not much interaction uh, mechanically between the fluid and the solid. I had taken that into account. So that was kind of new back then, especially within the area of electrokinetics. Uh, and I'd like to just interleave this discussion by saying that joining Professor Suman Chakraborty's group was also kind of a strange decision because, in our dual degree specializations, we have three broad streams:
mm.
manufacturing, thermal and fluid, and mechanical systems design.
Mecca.
Mechanical
Mm,
systems design is the dry one, which doesn't involve
mm.
any fluid flow or heat transfer or all these
Yeah.
things. So it's basically elasticity, solid mechanics, dynamics, control, all these
Mm,
things.
mm.
I had chosen this particular specialization in my third year. And I had told myself, as well as some of my best friends, that come what may, I am not going to do my higher studies in involving fluids and thermodynamics and heat transfer. I don't particularly like them. I'm going to
Mm.
do the things in the dry things.
Solid
But
mechanics, the kind of things.
yes, so I
Okay.
ended up doing my PhD in fluid mechanics. But Professor Suman Chakraborty knew my background, so he told me that yeah, let's put some solid mechanics in your work.
Nice, nice, wonderful, wonderful. So, so then you completed your PhD
Yes,
with Professor Suman, and then you also moved out of India. How was that experience, and where did you spend your time?
right.
I assume you went to Birmingham and Oxford, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my first postdoc was at Oxford,
Oh, okay.
and my second postdoc was at Birmingham. So
Okay.
during my PhD, as I said, I was working on electrokinetics, and uh, like almost 50% of my time was spent going through Google Reader. So remember, there was this RSS
Yeah.
reader,
Yeah.
Google Reader. They have discontinued it.
Yes.
So I used to go through lots of papers and something ancillary to my own research work also. And back then, I had downloaded quite a few papers involving lithium and batteries
Mm,
because a researcher who was working in my area was also working in that area, and uh, I was following his work. So when it was time for applying for postdoc applications, Professor Suman Chakraborty actually told me that if you ever want to return to IIT Kharagpur as a faculty member, you
Mm,
have to show your specialization in something beyond microfluidics,
mm,
because I'm already here.
mm.
So what new value addition would you give to the department if you also say that your specialization is microfluidics?
I'm afraid. Yeah.
Why? I mean, what is the new thing you are bringing? So you have to do something else during your postdoc. So that was a key factor in my decision of choosing something completely different. In fact, as different as it was not even in fluid mechanics, my first postdoc. It was in solid mechanics. So I went back to my undergraduate roots in my
Undergraduate.
yeah in my postdoc, and I was working in the area of modeling lithium and battery particles at Oxford.
Mm,
So it
mm,
was
mm,
in the Mathematical Institute at Oxford. It was a completely mathematical work, simulations. There was no experiments, and uh, uh, and after that, I again changed my field a little bit, and I worked in an area of mathematical biology, modeling plant cell growth
mm.
at Birmingham.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Um, so in
Fascinating.
hindsight, it was kind of a good exposure. I mean, and some of the senior professors have told me that yes, it's good that you let yourself be exposed to different kinds of things. It shows that you're not a one trick pony.
Funny. Yeah. Yeah, important. Versatility is important because then you can diversify and also uh, take problems from various different angles and other things too. Very, very interesting. So then you probably also made a deliberate decision to come back to India. What motivated you to come back? You always
I
wanted.
think I was absolutely sure that I would come back to
Sure.
India.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even when I was leaving shores,
Mhm.
I knew I'd come back, and I always had this in mind that I wanted to become a faculty member in the mechanical engineering department of IIT Kharagpur or IIT Kanpur. So
Nice. Nice.
one of
Nice.
these two.
Wonderful, wonderful. So now you moved to IIT Kharagpur in 2016, I
Right.
assume, and
Yes. Yes.
you've been there ever since. And how was your transition, Jeevan, from being a kind of student, a postdoc, and now you're now becoming a one second. So tell us a little bit about that transition,
Right.
Jeevan.
So after finishing my postdoc at Oxford and Birmingham, I joined for exactly 3 months. I think it was exactly 90 days at
Mm,
ISC, Bangalore, as a DST inspired faculty. That was just a brief interlude.
mm.
And then I joined IIT Kharagpur in August 2016 as a faculty member. Uh, it was a bit funny. I mean, so suddenly the people who were my teachers had become my colleagues.
Colleagues. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it was a bit funny and interesting, but I think we all got used to it. Um, and my first experience at teaching, because that's the first new thing one does after becoming a faculty, because research wise it's just going
Yeah,
on as a smooth continuum, right? From
absolutely
one's
correct. Yeah.
PhD to one's postdoc, then as a faculty, but teaching is something new. uh,
Mm,
I had a little bit of a teaching experience at Birmingham. uh,
mm.
my my mentor there had gone to Australia for a term, so I was teaching one course there, but this was a full on course which I had to do it here at IIT Kharagpur, and uh, that was also sudden. I had joined here in the middle of the semester, and there was no teaching load initially, and suddenly I got a phone call from the head of the department suddenly that there's a very senior professor who is in the hospital, and his course needs to be taken over. So 48 hours notice, I go into class.
Wow.
Thankfully, it was fluid
That's
mechanics, so in which I
huh,
had some experience. So
nice.
yeah, that's how it started.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. That's actually quite fascinating because then eh, it's gradual. All of us have actually felt that because you will not even realize that transition, right? Sometimes The life is going so fast, and also in a multifaceted way, because your
Yes.
responsibilities become multiple, because you're
Yes.
no more just only just doing research and you're looking after yourself. You will have a group, you'll also have to take responsibilities of teaching, departmental duties, and etc etc. There will be so many other parts of it. uh, and tell me, at that point where you also made a decision to start engaging and starting the YouTube channel. In fact, that is a fascinating thing. How did that happen? How did that happen? Tell me.
Um, so when I had joined as a faculty member, I had, to be honest, I had forgotten that I had a YouTube channel.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, so I had uploaded a few videos back in my undergraduate days. All throughout my PhD and my postdoc, I had not uploaded a single thing. It was absolutely dormant.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yes, so if you go back to my videos, there's a huge hiatus between
Uh,
2008 and 9 and I think 2020. So, for
yeah.
about 10, 11 years, it was absolutely dormant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the pandemic actually was what triggered the resurgence of
Triggered
the
it.
channel. So during the pandemic, I remembered that, oh, yes, I have an account in YouTube. I can upload my videos there. So we had to share the video lectures with the students. What better way to do it than YouTube? Uh, so in my head, YouTube was never a thing which I could use as a broad platform for sharing my ideas or anything like that. It was
Mm.
just one of those services which helped us to share videos because the size was huge. You cannot put it
Huge.
as an attachment to an email. I mean, my
Yeah.
notion of YouTube was that naive. Uh, but it was during the pandemic that I realized that no, there is a certain potential here in
Potential.
reaching out to the students. But then we were all very busy, as I'm sure you were all also too, in
Yeah.
sharing our lectures, making our lectures overnight, and then sharing them with the students. So 2020 and 2021, at least the first of it went on like that.
Mm.
Things started to settle down a little bit during the second half of 2021, I believe.
Mm.
And by that time, I had also been a faculty for about 4 or 5 years, uh, gained a bit of more maturity compared to my very nascent 2016 days, where I was really raw. But I
Mm.
learned a few things by the time it was 2021. And I had realized that there were certain mistakes which are being done time and again by the students during their presentations of the various seminars, those kinds
Mm.
of things. So I made a couple of videos giving some general advice, which was primarily targeted to the IIT Kharagpur students, especially to the mechanical engineering students.
Mechanical. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Probably it got like, I don't know, maybe 200, 300 views, something like
Mm.
that. And I thought that, yeah, I am doing a very good job of it. Yeah.
Mm.
So beyond my lectures, we are doing something. Uh,
Mm.
and then I don't know. I was searching for something else, and then by accident, I came across Tarun's video,
Ah.
which was
Okay.
a very beautifully made video, but I couldn't
Yeah. Yeah.
agree with him on certain points. So I thought that I had to respond some. I had to make something. So obviously, I could not make a video which had such high production quality as his. But in my own small way, I think I, I I I thought that I just make it for the sake of around our undergraduate students, so they don't get some wrong notions by looking at a senior's video.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so after Durga Puja had come down, we were all visiting Kolkata, and we had come down to Kharagpur alone, living as a effective bachelor for a few weeks because my entire family
Okay.
was there. And
Okay.
an idle mind is a devil's workshop, and I had this I had this devilish idea of finally getting around to making that reaction video one evening.
Uh,
Uh,
nice. Nice.
Yes, I thought that I should make it and share it among the students.
Mm.
I shared it and then went off to make dinner and then slept. Then in the morning, I was just going about my life, just randomly checked it, and then I found, oh my God, what is this?
It had gone
So yeah,
viral, right? Yeah.
yes,
In fact, as
I
of
didn't
as of
know
today,
what was happening.
what it has probably about 2.3 million views or something like that.
Yes.
That's unheard of, actually.
That is the
Amazing,
video I
amazing.
probably had spent the least amount of time making.
Making that also tells a little bit about the whole game in a sense. True, true. No, that's something very, very interesting. But
Yeah,
after that,
I
no.
just pressed on record.
Mm.
I spoke my mind, and
Mm.
then I just stopped it, and I
Oh
just
man.
dumped the whole thing on YouTube. No editing, nothing.
Amazing, amazing. But subsequently, you also have developed that kind of channel in a very interesting way, which I personally like. The reason I'll tell that is it has a component of science and engineering, serious stuff where you are really talking about various interesting topics, including the course what you have taught.
Yes.
In addition to that, you are imparting very important kind of actual coaching. In my opinion, that is actually the most important education one can supplement with the technical education. That part is unfortunately not there. There is not an avenue for somebody to go and listen to, who is talking calmly and also giving them what happens around the education. What happens inside the classroom, you will always have. Nowadays there are many big channels which are running the coaching and other things which are happening. But to give the viewpoint which makes that student or any researcher a rounded person, a good human being, is very, very important. Otherwise there's no point in they doing any kind of education. Was it kind of deliberate, or how did you come across that idea of kind of moving into that part of creating such channel, and also this kind of discussion and other things?
Subsequent to that video going viral,
Hmm.
and me realizing that yes, I could probably reach out to a few more students,
Hmm.
I thought that yes, probably this the universe is telling me something.
Hmm.
I should try to share a few things which I genuinely very strongly believe in.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so things which are very simple, and probably among us academicians, they're quite, I mean, very straightforward things. Nobody
Yeah,
discusses these things,
you're
but
right.
among the student community, they're probably not that well known.
Well known. Yeah.
And one thing which I have always tried to maintain while talking in those videos is that sometimes students have a very wrong notion about what a professor is and what
Hmm.
kind of thinking goes into it. As uh, so humanizing science, right?
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
as you so strongly advocate about it, I too
Absolutely.
thought that sometimes students don't realize that we are also flesh and blood. We are not
Absolutely
just
right.
out there to cut their marks or to set difficult questions. uh, we are also motivated by certain things, sometimes absolutely genuine notions of helping them. So,
Yes.
if I say something based on my experiences, and it will always be true that I don't have anything to sell to them. So I'm not selling merchandise. I'm not selling T-shirts.
Absolutely.
I'm not selling mugs or anything. So I'm not selling any classes or coaching, or I'm not doing anything to earn money from them. So
Absolutely.
uh, whatever I say, probably a few students will probably understand that yes,
Mm.
whatever this person is saying is genuine, and maybe I could be like a mouthpiece uh, for all our professional
Mm.
colleagues or professors, whatever we are thinking. If I could just speak on their behalf, then it'd be a good thing. And yes, I did take a deliberate decision of sharing certain things,
Mm.
as you have said. Um, you know, while writing a paper, we first do a literature survey. I
Yes.
actually
Yes.
did this a little bit during my
Yeah.
initial
I
days.
I've
Yeah,
seen actually you referring to some papers and also talking. I've seen some of the videos. The researcher in you has really played a role there.
and I also tried to find out if other people were making similar kind of videos.
Videos.
So some things did not really exist, which I have
Hmm.
tried to communicate to the students.
It's a great service. It's a great service. In fact, in my opinion, I think this is something which is very important and necessary in a day and age where cutthroat kind of competition is just encouraged without really giving them that overall viewpoint. It's actually more important than the courses what they take in many times.
And like thankfully, the many of the ideas I've gotten from the for the videos were actually suggested by the community themselves.
community.
They
Yeah, yeah.
yes they sometimes they put in very nice comments. uh,
Yes.
some of them are quite mean and
Yeah.
ignorant. That's the wild internet for you.
Yeah.
But some of the students are absolutely genuine in their suggestions and comments, and I'm really grateful for them. So
Absolutely, absolutely. No, in fact, see, they are also growing up in a day and age where the exposure to technology is far higher than what we are then and even now. To be very frank, we probably are maybe conversant and also kind of competent in certain things, whereas they really live the life where they are
yes,
really kind
it
of.
is their natural habitat.
Exactly, it's their natural habitat. It's a very nicely put thing. So Jeevan, in that sense, I would want to also ask a little bit about the kind of future plans what you have in terms of your own research work and also in terms of the education what you actually are very deeply interested in. Is there any specific initiative related to both your own research and also the kind of thing what you do on YouTube? Tell us a little bit about those kind of broader viewpoints.
So, for my research, as I am growing older, I would like very much to collaborate more with
Mm,
experimentalists, which is
nice.
something which I have kind of missed out on all
Mm,
these days. I would like very much to do that. And there are a few very pre-nascent, I don't know if that's the right terminology for it, pre-nascent ideas that I have. I don't know how they will pan out, so maybe it's not such a wise idea to
yeah,
to
yeah,
mouth off
yeah.
on a public forum like this.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
Let me see if it works out.
yeah.
But most of my ideas, because of the kind of training that I have had, are on the modeling side, involving
Modeling.
mathematical modeling, simulations, these sort of things. So involving solid mechanics mostly. uh, but there is
Yeah,
always that.
I've seen you've been also interested in certain kind of materials which are used in batteries, in
Right,
lithium ion
right.
batteries. It's
Yes,
a very
yes,
important area. It's fascinating kind of
yes.
topic too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
So
good thing about it is a lot of like a huge thrust going over all over the world in this
mm,
area. It's a very active area of research. uh, but of course, as an individual researcher, I have chosen to work in a very niche area
mm,
where um, I I try to use my knowledge of solid mechanics um, in an area which is primarily physical chemistry and chemical
yes,
engineering, batteries.
nice.
But there is an important aspect of solid mechanics in the next generation battery materials. And I could go on and on for that, but
Yeah,
let's not get too deep into
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
regarding your other question regarding uh, the what I have in store for my YouTube channel,
Mm,
well, I'm not really sure. I really am not sure because there is a certain repetitiveness to it.
mm,
Because
mm.
as academicians, we live our life in terms of the academic calendar,
True,
and
true.
every year we have a fresh bunch of students who get to see this academic calendar for the first time, and the kind of problems that they face, the kind of issues that they go through, it's always the same, more or less, in different garbs maybe with the changing generations, but fundamentally the same kind of issues that they go through year after year. So
Yeah,
it perhaps behooves me to share the same kind of advice on a regular basis to the students, to the fresh generations of students. But uh, I would I would like to perhaps go back to making a few videos meant for high school students as they
nice.
transition to plus two. I've already made a few videos about that,
Mm,
and the response has been wonderful. I would perhaps like to go back to those things, um, and perhaps something which has been kind of missing from my efforts is videos meant for the masters level students.
Mm, mm,
So I've
yeah.
been mostly focusing. I've made a couple of videos maybe for them, but I have mostly concentrated on the undergraduate students, the PhD students, and the high school students. But master students, maybe I start thinking uh, of something specifically meant for them.
Wonderful. That's actually fantastic kind of initiative. You know, people who are listening to this conversation, I would strongly recommend to go and visit Jeevan's YouTube channel. I would of
Thank you.
course link all the things in the description and in the show notes. If you are listening to this on audio also, you'd be able to obtain all the links. So Jeevan, finally give us a kind of an overview, uh, the kind of overall viewpoint of academics, because what you're doing, as I have been also telling this on the podcast, uh, we also have to value people who value education, because in India there is a perception, and I'm not kind of putting it as a wrong thing. There is some kind of notion that if you're doing research, only that is important, and teaching is somehow kind of subsidiary aspect of it. But for a very well rounded kind of education system, the research and teaching goes hand in hand. And in IITs and ICERs, that is also the system what we generally follow. So
Right.
what is your viewpoint, and kind of also conclusion to the kind of conversation of how this thing has to be viewed? This is an important thing, I assume, because not only doing work for oneself but also kind of broadening the horizon. What are your viewpoints, if you can just
Yes, I
tell us a little
completely
bit?
agree with
Mhm.
you. I completely agree with you. The research side of it, it's mostly something which we do kind of for ourselves. I mean, we are contributing to the broad body of work in
Yeah.
whichever area we are working in, but ultimately it is kind of an individual effort, maybe a group effort.
Mm.
It benefits our PhD students, our master students, and so on and so forth. Uh, but it is kind of an individualistic
Yeah.
uh, endeavor. But when it comes to teaching, see, the products of the institutes are the students.
Yes.
Right. So we are contributing towards them. And sometimes I try to remind myself that we are always thinking of the students as a body,
Mm.
like the students. It is
Mm.
always the students.
That's
But
yeah.
that student body is actually composed of individuals. Now, sometimes we get frustrated that, okay, students nowadays, they don't pay attention to class, they don't come to class, and this and that. But maybe even out of 250, yeah, 250 students, even there are, let's say, 10 students who genuinely take something away from your lectures. I think that's a win. You have made a difference. Making a difference, a genuine difference to the lives of 10 human beings is something which you will not be able to experience in many, many jobs in the world. This is a
Absolutely right.
privilege. This is a privilege which God has given us, which somehow our circumstances, our family has made it possible for us. We should make the most of this privilege. And see, you mentioned about different places. Yeah, when I was at Oxford, it's a fabulous place. I
Mm.
mean, needless to
Mm.
say, one thing I really realized there was that very senior professors were absolutely serious about teaching.
Yeah,
They were
you're
world class
absolutely right. Yeah.
researchers. They
Mm.
were world class researchers. But when it comes to undergraduate education, they were absolutely serious. Like one of my postdoc mentors, I was about to enter his room to ask something, and I saw that he was very intently
Mm.
studying something. I realized
Okay.
he was actually studying for his class.
Class. That's the
Yeah.
seriousness. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely. Great message. It's a fantastic message. In fact, I totally agree with you that kind of element of seriousness is so important. and we should strongly encourage people to do that. Yeah, very nice, Jivan. It's been a pleasure. In fact, exchanging these ideas with you, and also, it's great learning experience. Every time I sit with people, I always kind of, finish on a note that you are gaining so much of knowledge, talking to people, different perspectives, and this is also part of Emergence series in the Pratidwani. So I'm hoping that we'll have more conversations with you at some point of time, and we will
Absolutely.
be able to discuss more things. So thank you very much for your time.
It
It's
was
been a
really lovely
absolute,
talking to you.
yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Same here.
So this is Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science. This time with the one and the only Jeevan Chakraborty. Thank you, Jeevan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.